Hello everyone and welcome to the High Inflation Speedrun Guide. In this guide I will show you everything you need to know to get your time under 36 seconds, and it will help you rise up to the top ranks. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. I will not be going over how the balloon power-up works since I went over that in my Helium High Speedrun Guide. If you are unfamiliar with how the controls on this power-up works, I recommend going and watching that video first. I will only be going over new information that is actually useful in this stage. As always, you can customize your button assignments for your controller. In order to do this, you will need to go to your system settings, go up to accessibility, go down to controllers, go to custom button assignments for DualSense wireless controller, and then you will need to enable custom button assignments, and then you can go down to the customized button assignments. I personally like to change the trigger buttons to the bumpers whenever I'm playing these stages. So I will swap my L2 to L1, go over to my R2, swap it to R1, and once you are done customizing your controller, just hit apply. This is what I prefer, but just kind of play around with it, figure out what you like, and use what's best for you. This stage is broken up into 5 sections. There is the first vent, the long jump, the rotating platforms, the spiked floor, and the final trio vents. Just like with Helium Heights, whenever you use the balloon power-up, you want to get out of it as quickly as you can so that way you can save as much time as possible. The balloon moves at 80% speed of what your sprint does, so this means that for every 4 frames that you are in the balloon, this loses 1 frame to what you could have been using sprinting. Now let's begin with the first section of the stage, which is the first vent. Before the stage begins, we want to put Astro on the far right side of this ribbon, and we want to line up with the corner of this airbag that we're going to get a big bounce off of. When you bounce from it, you want to go slightly more to the right, and then you want to go up to this wall where the spikes are and do an inflation, and then immediately deflate and land on the next airbag. If you're too far to the left, you will get shocked by these enemies and fail the stage. What I like to use as a visual marker is this line right in the middle of these 2 platforms. I go just barely to the right of it and do my inflation, and then that will get me in just the right spots. That way I barely miss them and I keep a straight of line as possible. Whenever I bounce from this first airbag and I'm hovering, just before Astro starts to drop using the hover, that's whenever I choose to inflate with the balloon. This gives me a good timing so that way I'm as close as I possibly can be to the spikes without actually running into them. There's not really a good visual marker or anything to use to start deflating toward this second airbag. You'll just have to kind of practice this a little bit and get used to the timing. The idea is to land on the very front of this second airbag. After you bounce from the second airbag, you're going to want to hover up to this wall, do an inflation. You want to land just on the corner of this airbag up top. Just like with the other one, you want to make sure that you don't run into the spikes and also dodge this electric enemy at the same time. When you do bounce from this one, you're going to want to do a hover at the peak of Astro's bounce. And the tricky thing about this part is that there is a certain point you want to do an inflation. If you get your timing correctly, you should only miss 2 coins below you whenever you ride this air vent. What I do is I look at the lasers from Astro's hover, and before it goes off of this airbag below you onto the spikes, that's whenever I choose to do my inflation. This is a pretty good visual marker that will almost always guarantee you that you will get the best timing possible. When you get to the top, you will need to do a deflate and bounce on the edge of this platform below you. What I like to do is whenever Astro completely passes over this edge, that's usually whenever I choose to start doing a deflate, and this puts me in a pretty good spot where I'll perfectly bounce on that edge every time. We now move into the second section of the stage, which is the long jump section. Once you deflate and hit the edge of this platform, you will need to do a hover and then inflate again and get on top of this invisible platform where the spikes are at. You want to try to time this to where you barely get on top where this invisible platform is, and you can immediately deflate as soon as you get up here. This will save you a few frames if you can time this correctly. Another important thing to note is that you want to aim for the front left corner of this invisible platform and then run from that corner all the way across to the next corner. As you can see from this top-down shot of the 2 platforms, going from the edge of the platform after the air vent to the far corner on this invisible platform, the line goes over the front left corner as well. Once you reach the end of the invisible platform, you will need to do a very well-timed jump, mid-air spin, hover, and then you will need to inflate at the last possible opportunity to save as much time as you possibly can. There are 2 ways you can jump from this invisible platform. There is the method I just showed you, and then there is a perfect edge jump you can do that can save you 2 frames. There is no one right way to do this, but I tend to use a full jump because it's more consistent, and I do it shortly after I pick up this last coin while running across. This seems to give me a pretty good idea of whenever I need to do a jump. Once you perform the long jump, as I said before, you want to go as far as you possibly can before you do an inflation. And so whenever Astro is hovering, I actually let Astro drop a little bit during their hover, and then I do the inflation. There's an invisible platform just above you that you are aiming for, and you want to just barely make it on top of it so you can deflate and immediately get out of the balloon. If your timing was perfect whenever you did your inflation after the long jump, you can actually do a no deflate method. As you can see right here, I didn't even use the deflate. As soon as I hit the edge of the platform, Astro immediately jumped out of it. This is the best way to do it because you don't have to do any inputs and you get out of the balloon inflation as soon as you possibly can. Finding this invisible platform can be pretty tricky at times, so what I like to do is I like to use this split between the two platforms above you, and I go just barely to the right of it, and that will put me in the right spot I need to be in every time. Once you complete this jump, you will now be on the third section of the stage, which is the rotating platforms. This is one of the most trickiest parts of the stage because it's very easy to lose time here and not realize it. After you deflate from the invisible platform, you will need to go in a straight line toward this bell platform, and if you go in a straight line, you should go just to the right edge of the platform that the bell is on. As long as you don't turn your camera up early and activate the bells, then you should have no problem getting through this section and getting off the platform before the bell comes back down on top of you. Do a full jump and then a hover, and when you get to the top of your hover, you're going to want to do an inflate and deflate on the left edge of this safe spot on the rotating platform. It is important to note that staying on a straight line is much more vital to saving time than trying to deflate early. Whenever you are doing this, make sure that you're staying in as straight of a line as possible, and then as the platform rotates toward you, deflate as soon as you can to hit the left edge of this safe spot. If you did your timing well, you will get a boosted bounce which will bounce you higher and slightly to the left, which will save you a little more time. Even if you don't get this, don't quit the run, just keep going because you'll need practice throughout this section because this is the trickiest section of the entire stage. Whenever you do bounce from this rotating platform, you will need to do a very well-timed hover and a mid-air spin, and then an inflate to make it on top of this second rotating platform. It is important that you do not go too far to the left because if you do, you will have to do your inflate earlier, which will cost you some time. Instead, stay a little more to the right side of it so when you inflate, you should barely go over these spikes as they're turning around toward you. And if you time this correctly, you should be able to land on this safe spot of the rotating platform very quickly. After landing, just do a hover and a mid-air spin and you should land on this airbag, and don't even worry about the birds. Unless you land on the very far edge, they won't even harm you. We now move on to the fourth section of the stage, which is the spiked floors section. After bouncing on this airbag on the last rotating platform, you will need to do a well-timed hover, and then you want to do a very well-timed inflation to where you barely get on top of this platform where the spikes are. You should just barely graze by these spikes without actually touching them. While you're inflating, you also want to push Astro ever so slightly to the left, but not so far left where you get in front of this airbag moving left and right across this spiked floor. Once you get up here, as soon as the platform starts moving back to the right, you'll want to deflate so that way you can get out of the inflation as soon as possible. And then you will need to do a well-timed hover and a spin so that way you can get over this electric line moving back and forth and land on the second airbag that's moving left and right across the platform. Whenever I'm doing my hover on this and trying to time my mid-air spin, I actually like to wait for the lightning strike. You'll notice that the stage will flash and you can hear the thunder. This is a very good indicator to use to land on this second airbag as soon as possible. We now move into the final section of the stage, which is the trio air vents. When you bounce from this last airbag moving across the spiked floor, you will need to do a hover and then an inflation. Do not do a mid-air spin because this will make you go into the air vent at a lower spot and will cost you a little bit of time. All you need to do is make sure you get the full bounce from the airbag and then do a full hover and then do an inflation just before Astro starts to drop while doing a hover. You'll also want to be slightly to the right so that way you also enter this first vent as soon as you possibly can. I usually like to go just to the right of the eye of this first air vent, and that puts me on a pretty good line. Once you enter the first air vent, you will just need to ride it all the way to the top, and then you will need to do a well-timed deflate so that way you can land on the finish button and end the stage. When I'm going to deflate to land onto the final platform, a visual indicator I like to use is as soon as I see Astro past the edge of this final platform, that's when I choose to do my deflate, and that allows me to land on the front edge and then end the stage as quickly as I can. And here's a run with me using all of these strategies. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's been long overdue, but it just took me a little bit of time to get a bunch of things done so I could get back to this. So I do appreciate your patience in waiting on this, and I hope that this video helped you and maybe it helps clarify a few things, that way you can further improve your times. And as always, if you want to see updates of the videos, what I'm working on, get a little sneak peek, then you can always join my Discord, where some members review the footage and make sure that everything's being explained clearly. If you need further help, I highly recommend you join the Speedrun.com Astrobot Discord, where there are more people in there that can help you than just me. And if you want to catch me doing these runs live, make sure to follow me on Twitch. That's where I do all my live streaming. And as always, I hope this video helped you, and I hope it helps you to further get your time down, helps clarify some things. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Good luck with your runs.